Hello, welcome to the first year BHM course of Guru Nanak Institute of Technology, Kolkata. I'm Dr. Indrajit Bose and I shall be your course coordinator for this session. This paper is entitled Business Communication with the paper code of BHM N102. In the course of this paper, we are taking a look at the various forms and genres and modes of communication, especially in the workplace and in the hospital and healthcare sector. We have looked at different types of media and modes in hospitals, the barriers to the use of different media, and what is the meaning of communication over there. And we have also looked at different types of written documentation. Today, in this lecture, we are going to take a look at reading skills and reading comprehension, which is lecture 9 in the series. Now, if we talk about the language skills, then you know that there are 4 macro skills or 4 major language skills, which are listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So reading is one of the major areas of communication, and it is something which is very, very important in our everyday lives. What was the last time that you read something? Was it in the class lecture that you read something that your teacher had written on the board? Or was it an email that you read? Or was it a Facebook post that you looked at before you came to college today? So whatever you have been doing, or even if you have been just flipping through the WhatsApp messages sent by your friends, you are always reading. Reading is a crucial and continual activity in which we are engaged most of the time, even though we don't always do it very consciously, and we are rather unaware of how important a place it takes in our lives. In today's lecture, I shall be looking at what is reading, the nature and purposes of reading. I should also be looking at various rapid reading strategies like skimming and scanning, and also other strategies like intensive reading. I shall be looking also at reading comprehension and the kind of questions that you get from reading comprehension. To go back to what I began with, that is, what exactly is reading and how important it is as a skill area in communication. Actually, reading is what brings the outer world close to us, or we find out about the world around us through what we read, or the books and other materials that we read. To put it very simply, reading is basically an interaction between a reader and a text. So there need to be 2 constants over there. One is that we need a reader or a person who is able to read, and we need a text of some kind. Now that text may be a written text like a notepad, or it might be a text like a pamphlet or a book or a magazine, or it might even be an e-text like an e-ticket or a WhatsApp message, for example. So basically what is involved is that there is a negotiation between the reader and the text in order to extract meaning from the text. There is, in other words, a continuous and active engagement that takes place between the reader and the text. So the process of reading is an active one, though the reader himself or herself may be silent at the time of reading. Now, reading texts are basically all around us. If you consider from the very first moment that you wake up in the morning, you look at your smartphone and the text messages which are coming, you look at the news flashes over there. then maybe you take a glance at the newspaper headlines, or you look at the news flashes as they come up on the TV screen when you switch on the television in the morning. You also look at the shop signs, the billboards, the signboards and hoardings as you pass by the road, or on the road in a bus or in a cab, or if you are traveling by bus, then you look out for the bus numbers, the bus routes. If you go by train, then you look at the train numbers, the train routes. Then when you are in the college, you look at the notice boards, different kinds of posters, billboards. You read your textbooks, notebooks, other reading materials in the library, different kinds of magazines. In this way, we keep reading all the time, and you can say that there are a multitude of different texts all around us. Now, there are basically two kinds of reading. One is silent reading, when you are reading the text without pronouncing the words aloud, without saying it aloud, or when I'm reading aloud, particularly for children or with beginner readers. It is, of course, reading aloud, which is mostly practiced because it helps them to grasp the basic rudiments of reading and vocabulary. Now, I think the starting premise is clear to all of us that we live surrounded by a world of different texts, and we are reading something or the other at different points of time, or it's a continuous and ongoing process, and we are involved in reading all the time. Now, if that is the case, then reading is a central activity in our lives, and it is of great importance, or it is of all-absorbing importance. Now, if we live surrounded by so many different kinds of texts, now the question is that why do we read these various texts? Now, I have put examples of some different texts in the box over here. Let us take a look. There is a text like Robinson Crusoe, which is a novel. Then Tintin in Tibet, that's a comic book. Gardening Made Simple, it's an instruction manual for gardeners. Baking for Beginners, it's a cookery book. Home Decor Ideas, again, this is a book about interior decoration. Sewing Patterns, again, it's a book about sewing, this kind of instruction manual. Now, why are we reading these books? Are these books all the same, or do they have similar kinds of purposes? No, they don't. Why do we read Robinson Crusoe, for example? We are interested in following the adventures of the protagonist, Robinson Crusoe, when we read the book. So we want to find out what happened to him after his shipwreck. So it's a tale of adventure. So you can say that it's mainly for entertainment that we are reading Robinson Crusoe. So also Tintin in Tibet. But Gardening Made Simple, or Sewing Patterns, or Baking for Beginners, we are not reading these books for the purpose of entertainment. Of course, we might get a sort of variety and interest from these books if we are genuinely interested in gardening. Of course, I suppose these books will be full of beautiful illustrated pictures, and they'll be very good to look at. But we are not reading these books for entertainment. We are mainly reading these books for the instruction part, or rather, the information that we are getting from there. So we are reading Gardening Made Simple, Baking, Home Decor Ideas, and Sewing Patterns. All these 4 books in order to get information pertaining to their particular subject areas about gardening, about baking, about home decoration, and about sewing. So sometimes we can say that we read for the purposes of entertainment. At other times, we read for information or to get instruction of some kind. So broadly speaking, these are the 2 purposes for which we read. Again, if we talk about, before we go on to look at different varieties or kinds of reading, basically what is involved in the process of reading. We have seen that it's a continuous and ongoing process, and it needs two constants. One is a reader, the other is a text. We also need a basic literacy level on the part of the reader in order to engage in a positive way with the text. So if the reader is not able to make sense of what is in the text or is not able to read, then of course we cannot say that reading can at all take place. So basically, the reader would need a basic literacy level and some knowledge of the language, the structures which are used there, the vocabulary that is used, the spelling of the words, and so on. Also, the reader brings to the text something quite valuable and important, that is, his or her personal worldview and experience of the world, general knowledge and experience of the world, which further enriches the process of reading. So it's not just a question of your being able to read and decipher the text, but also what you bring to the text in terms of your personal knowledge and experience, which is of value. Together with that, this process is further enriched if the reader is somebody who is knowledgeable about other texts and can draw parallels and cross references with other kinds of texts. Like, for example, in Robinson Crusoe, again, there are parallels with the Bible. So, if you know about the Bible and the stories over there, you can draw parallels with many of the sufferings and joys of Robinson Crusoe. So, the understanding of the various themes and forms that we read about is enriched further by our understanding of other texts. So we see that the more experience we have about the world and about other books and authors, the more enriched our process of reading is going to be. Now, basically, we are going to address something very fundamental of how we are reading the text. So it's a question of the techniques that we bring to bear in reading the text. As we have just said or noted, that it's not simply a question of the literacy level, but the way in which the reader is able to unlock the meanings in the text. Now, at a very simple level, there are various questions that we can ask. Questions like, what are the details in the text about? What is this text about? Can I summarize the main ideas in the text? In fact, what are the main ideas in the text? And can I make a summary of these ideas in my own words? If there are new words used over here, what's the meaning of these words? Why are they used? What is the author trying to convey by using words like this? What is the text really about? So these kinds of questions, you see, readers who are more conscious about their reading strategies would tend to think more and question more and also self-monitor their own reading. So you can in fact do that when you are reading, and we hope to be able to discover more about these techniques. In fact, you have been using these techniques for a long time, but maybe not consciously. So we shall take a look at what are the techniques that can be used and that are used by readers who are fairly proficient and competent in unlocking the meanings from the text. Let us proceed further. Now, it's not just a question of technique, but as we have already said, it's a question of reading proficiency or the speed of reading. Now, the speed at which one reads will obviously vary depending upon the length and the difficulty level of the material. Sometimes it is at a speed of around 600 words per minute. That's fast for books we read for leisure, we are comfortable with. And again, with more difficult materials, the speed might slow down of 400 words per minute. It depends on your comfort level with the book. And sometimes you need the help or outside help of a dictionary or thesaurus. Sometimes even without pausing to reread or to find out the meanings, we go and we move fast when we are reading the text. Now, the question is that how fast can we read the text, and whether there are some texts which can be read faster than others or not. Because the faster we are able to process the information, the better and the quicker we are able to perform in the process of communication as such. Okay? So as a whole, communication or the process of communication per se will be speeded up if we are able to function as better and faster readers. So we are going to look at these techniques, some of them which are used for rapid reading, or in other words, we try to strategize our reading. Let us see how we can do that. In fact, there are some strategies which will help us to read faster. And by read faster, I don't just mean, read with great speed, though it is certainly that, but will help us to deliver certain aspects of the text quicker, or to speed up the information processing part of the text. So we are going to look at certain rapid reading strategies like skimming and scanning. We will also be looking at slow and careful reading like intensive reading and the SQ3R techniques. Okay, let us see. First, we will begin with a technique like skimming. Now, the overall purpose of skimming is to get the gist or the overall impression of the text. The time taken in reading the text when you skim it is less than 1 minute of time. In fact, the name skimming is actually a metaphor which is derived from the process of taking the top layer of cream from the milk. So once we do that, what we get left behind is the skimmed milk or the toned milk, right? So when we peel off the layer of cream from the milk, it's called skimming. So like that, to pursue the analogy in reading, when I go through a text fast in order to grasp the basic essentials or the essence of the text or the gist of the text, then that is called skimming. Now, please notice that over here, we are not going to read the text word for word or line by line. If we were to do that, then it would necessarily slow down our process of reading. So when you are going to skim, so the technique basically goes like this. Take the text and negotiate for meaning by running your eyes from the first line of the text to the lines below, and you might look from left to right or from right to left. Okay, so from any way, and you are not going to read it line by line, but you will look at the first lines of the paragraphs, you will look at the last lines of the paragraphs, and you will try to locate the keywords. Now you might have a pen or pencil hand in hand with you so that you can mark out the keywords as you go along. So let's say in a passage about nuclear power, the word atomic or nuclear has been used a number of times. So obviously that is a keyword. So I will have my pen or pencil in hand when I'm reading the text, and I will mark out the instances of the use of this keyword by underlining in the text. I will also look for certain other highlighted features, like, for example, I will look for words which are underlined or words which are italicized. Sometimes there are captions or headings or subheadings with texts, or there are paragraph headings. So I will read those because they might give me some inkling about the meaning of the text. I might also find some glosses or some meanings which are given by the side of the paragraphs, or I might also find certain pictures or maps or diagrams which will again give me some idea about the central meaning of the passage. So once I look at these, I'm able to take around less than 1 minute of time, but I'm able to say that, okay, yes, this passage is about nuclear power. Now, maybe I'm not able to give further details about what exactly it is saying about nuclear power, but I can say this much, that it is about nuclear power, right? So skimming does not give us the details about the text, but it gives us a general idea and impression of the gist or the essence of the text. So it is a very valuable technique, especially for longer passages and extracts if we have to deliver the meaning or find out the meaning within a short span of time. Yeah, let us look at this passage now, which is taken from the hospital care department, sorry, from a hospital called Weatherby Hospital. Okay, now here, of course, I cannot ask you to skim the passage and tell me the meaning within less than a minute, but I'm going to read the passage for you and point out the keywords. Now, notice that there's a picture of the hospital. If you look at the bottom right-hand corner of the slide, there's a picture of the hospital given over there. So it's very clear that it's about the hospital. And there is a caption over here which says, "We care." So obviously it's talking about patient care in the hospital, right? So we already get this idea from looking at the caption and the photograph. Now, what more do we get from the passage? So are there keywords which are repeated? Like Weatherby Hospital, caring, care, emergency care, support. So the word care, obviously, and patient are repeated a number of times. So these are keywords in the text. So obviously this passage is about patient care in this hospital. This much we can say if we scan the and look at the text and skim it with less than 1 minute of time. But obviously we cannot say further details. Let me just read the passage for you and see what it is saying. The standards of patient care at Weatherby Hospital are high. Though we are focused towards caring for cancer patients, we also take care of emergencies, surgeries, and OPD. We have provision for round-the-clock online appointments and a dedicated medical team to handle emergency 24 hours. Our critical and trauma care units are some of the best in the country with updated medical facilities, monitoring, and rehabilitation support. For in-house patients, we have dedicated dietitians and physiotherapists. Our OPD has 4 sunny and spacious waiting areas and a cafeteria. So it's talking about all the facilities that it provides for patients and the care that it takes of patients. Even without reading all this or looking at the details, if we just skim through the passage, we are able to say that it is about patient care in this hospital, right? So this is all about skimming. Now, I would like to look at another technique, which is scanning. Now we skim for the main idea, but we scan for specific details. Or in other words, we are looking for specific details when we scan. Again, the time taken is less than 1 minute of time. Now, what do we do when we scan? Again, I would say that you do not read the text word for word or line by line. Read the questions which are asked about the text first. Find out what is the information that you are specifically asked to find out and identify from the text. So once you're clear about that, you know that you are looking for that information and not anything else. The next thing that you have to do is, in a very, very ruthless and remorseless kind of way, just blank out all other kinds of information which are there in the passage. You are not concerned with those pieces of information. You are asked only to identify a few pieces of information, and that is only what you are looking for in the passage. Just blank out, just remove everything else from your consciousness when you are looking at the text, and don't try to read it line by line or word for word. So first look at the questions, then mark the passage out. Again, sit with a pen or pencil in hand and underline the keywords and the facts which are there or the phrases which are important, and differentiate between certain items which will enable you to do the scanning process. Now, I'm going to take a look at certain questions, and then we will look at a table which gives us a schedule of a bus, and we will answer those questions by scanning that schedule. Let's take a look at the questions first. This is about a bus traveling from Shimla to Naon in Himachal Pradesh. Okay, so there are 5 questions. The first one is, which are the days when the bus starts at 7 a.m.? On which day does the bus start at 8 a.m.? On which day is there no bus? If I want to start at 2 p.m., on which day should I take the bus? And on which days does the bus start at 3 p.m.? Okay, now let's take a look at the bus schedule, which will enable us to answer these questions. Okay, so here you have the bus which is traveling from Shimla to Naon. It looks quite a good bus, and it's brightly, the headlights are brightly shining, and I can see. Okay, so here we have the weekly schedule. On Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Okay, now the first question is, which are the days when the bus starts at 7 a.m.? Okay, so look at the starting times quickly, run your eyes through the starting times of the bus. 6 a.m., 6 a.m., 8 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 7 a.m. Okay, so Friday and Sunday, these are the 2 days on which the bus starts at 7 a.m. On which day does the bus start at 8 a.m.? 6 a.m., 6 a.m., 8 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 7 a.m. Okay, 8 a.m. is on Wednesday. On which day is there no bus? You can easily see Saturday it says no bus. If I want to start at 2 p.m., on which day should I take the bus? Now look at the afternoon time. 12 p.m., 1 p.m., 12 p.m., 1 p.m., 1 p.m., 2 p.m. Okay, so Sunday. This is the only day when the bus starts at 2 p.m. So if you want to take the bus starting at 2 p.m., then you have to take the bus on Sunday afternoon. On which days does the bus start at 3 p.m.? Okay, let's look at the afternoon timings once again. 12 p.m., 1 p.m., 12 p.m., 1 p.m., 3 p.m., 1 p.m., 2 p.m. Okay, so it's on Thursday that there is the bus at 3 p.m., but there isn't on any other day. So I should take the bus on Thursday if I want the bus to start at 3 p.m. Right? So it will not take you much time to find out the answers to scanning, but you know what you have to scan for first and identify those pieces of information by distinguishing them from similar looking information which is also going to be there in that same text. So this is what is involved in this process called scanning. Now, these techniques, skimming and scanning, are basically rapid reading techniques. But reading is not always rapid reading. There's also slow and careful reading, which is intensive reading, as it is called. So if I want to find out all the meanings of the text, then I will have to read it slowly and carefully. For intensive reading, I would read the passage slowly, line by line, word by word. I would look at every line and each and every word. I will look at all the images and symbols which are used in the text, and I will look at both the obvious meanings and also the hidden or the covert meanings. So, for intensive reading, first, when you have got the text, please go through the text quickly, skim through it, and get the gist of what it is about. Then scan it carefully and get the specific details of the text. Then get the main points and the sub-points. You can jot them down separately. And then look at the figures of speech or metaphors or similes or other images that the writer may have used. Look at the significance of these. Look at the various references which are used in the text and whether there are any hidden meanings. So look at all these and also look at the author's attitude to the subject. Once you have identified all these things, then you can say that you have done intensive reading from the passage. And this is what you are required to do when you have an exercise in reading comprehension. Mostly it is detailed reading. Now, we also have to take a look at SQ3R. Now, what is this SQ3R? Basically, it is survey question, read, recite, and review. Or survey, question, read, recall, and review. In other words, we try to differentiate between what is important in the text, what should be remembered, and what is less important or relevant. So, in other words, it makes it an active and purposeful process of reading. Or it begins with a kind of survey which can be applied to the entire book and later to each chapter and section. Now, let us see. We begin by surveying the text, and it's a process of surveying or skimming in which we find out the main ideas. Then we question about what we know about the topic already and what more we need to discover from this text. Then we read and look for answers to these questions that we have asked ourselves. Then we recite what we want to remember from the text, and finally recall by rereading our notes and link the information with our own experience. So this is what actually happens in the SQ3R. Let us look at it in further details. Okay, so it begins with a kind of survey. Now, survey is a technique which is basically a kind of an overall look at a broad-based text or at a very lengthy or detailed text. I can do a kind of a, this survey, or by looking at it in general terms, by looking at the general details or the highlights of that text. So, for example, if I look at a voluminous book like one of the volumes of the Britannica Encyclopedia, then it's huge. I cannot possibly read all the contents of that volume in one go or even in a couple of days. So it might take me a very long time to go through that entire book, but I can survey it. So what will I do? I will look at the title page. I will look at the table of contents. I will look at the preface and other parts. I will take a look at the chapter and section headings. I will look at the maps, charts, diagrams, and illustrations, and the section contents. So it might be arranged alphabetically, section by section. So I might be able to find out different items which I want to look at by looking up the alphabetical list. So in this way, I can do a survey of a large piece of text. Of course, I've taken the example of an Encyclopedia Britannica, but even with a prose passage or text, you can do a kind of survey by looking or tracing the highlights in that text first, or it's kind of skimming that you'll be doing with the passage before you try to explore or get at further meanings of the passage. Next, what we will do is to ask questions. WH questions like what, when, why, where, how. We're looking for reasons for things which are happening, conclusions, drawing deductions, inferences, and trying to identify key issues in the text. So what is the author talking about? Why does he mention these as the sources of nuclear power? Why does he not mention some other factors as important factors in the building of nuclear power stations? Why does he talk about the people being affected in this town by nuclear power development? Where are the locations that he is talking about? How are these locations described in the text? So these are all the questions. So I will try basically to add to my knowledge of the subject by going through the text, whether it is long or short, and see how it is addressing these issues. So I will try to tap my existing knowledge of the subject and then try to see where it is adding to that knowledge, or in what way it is adding to that knowledge. So I will ask these questions to get that information from the text. Then, of course, next, what I will have to do is to read the text. Read with the purpose. Purpose, what is the purpose? To find out the pieces of information, what, why, where, how, when, to which we have asked these questions. We can, of course, read at various levels, long as well as short, and carry on in spite of whatever difficulties we might face. Then comes the process of recalling what you have studied and try to fill in the gaps in the memory, knowledge, and understanding. So try to make word summaries, memory maps of what you have looked at, and try to recap that or paraphrase that mentally once you have gone through it. You see, all this reading is a process of reading and forgetting, because let us say that a good bit of what we have read through is something that we are likely to forget later on, or maybe we can say that we remember some of it, but not everything that we have read about. So try to refresh your memory of what you have read by making a memory map, or by maybe making a small diagram or chart, at least about the contents, about what you have read. So this is the process of recall or remembering after we have read. Then there is review. Of course, we forget over a period of time. Review ensures that the material in the short-term memory is transferred to the long-term memory. In other words, that there will be a lasting memory or impression of the reading. Now, of course, several readings may be required, and memory maps can, of course, reduce the time that we need for rereading by refreshing the picture in our minds and bringing it close to us much faster. Of course, we can review at periodic time intervals to jog it in our memory. So this is what we do basically. And when we are reading, then first we tend to read up any chapter summaries or questions, look at the chapter headings and subheadings, and then read the text, engage with the text, skim through it, try to locate the main points, then we scan it, locate the main points and the other points, and then try to answer the questions. Now, the questions from reading comprehension can be of different types. Some questions ask for only brief answers. So they might be asking for specific pieces of information in the text. So one word, one sentence answers, or very short answers. Maybe asking for only a date or fact or something else like that. Other questions ask for a brief answer, like a few lines of explanation. Why does this happen? Other questions might ask for a more detailed answer, in which you have to argue a case or say something for or against what the writer is saying in the passage by giving your own arguments. Again, there can be vocabulary items which are questioned about in the passage. So explain the meaning of these words and make sentences with them. So you should try to give the exact meaning and make sentences which would illustrate the use of the word. So these are some of the kinds of questions that we get from these reading passages. So I hope that in this reading comprehension exercise and the techniques of reading, I have been able to explain to you what is the nature and process of reading and how to read in a more proficient and engaging way so that we can maximize our effectiveness as readers. So I hope that you will be using these techniques also when you are reading next. So this brings us to the end of this particular lecture. Thank you.